Hi everyone, Christine Coral here again, and welcome to the last class in the Quieting Your Anxious Mind series, although not the last class by a long stretch. There's going to be a lot more. Actually, maybe I shouldn't even say that. Maybe as I think of new things that I should have added, I can just keep adding. Who knows? So anyway, what we're going to cover today is just a bit of a plan for when the going gets rough and a bit of a stick to it plan and how you keep going when you start working on your worry and your anxiety. So the main thing, and you may have noticed me say this a few times over many of the classes, is we need to practice. Really, so often when we learn to challenge our thoughts, when we learn how to think in a new way, we want to do everything about 100 times. Do 100 thought records, 100 thought challenging sheets, 100 times, actively and mindfully challenging our notion that we can't accept uncertainty. Whatever it is that you've learned in this class, it's so important to realize that it really does take practice. And I'm a bit of living proof with that. I always joke I'm a slow learner and that I've had to practice and practice and practice. And, that's definitely true. And it's kind of nice that I have this job. I get to think about this all the time. So I don't really worry that much anymore, And so part of the theme of this class was, also worrying is a behavior. It's not something that happens to you. So then it's something that you can work on changing. So like any behavior change, like if you try and quit smoking, if you try and exercise more, if you try to diet and change your eating habits, worrying can be a bit of a habit, just like any of those other habits. And so really it does take practice to build new habits and think about what you're doing. So when we treat anxiety too, the whole picture of anxiety, there's different components that we deal with. Certainly one is the worry. Right? So when we worry, we're trying to predict what could happen and prevent bad things from happening. But the other part with anxiety that we didn't cover in this and we'll cover in other classes is avoidance. So really, when we're treating anxiety, you have to face what you avoid. You want to approach things and come up with a plan. So I'll certainly be doing classes on behavioral avoidance, and we often have safety behaviors too. So there's things that scare us that we avoid, or certain things that we do that keep us safe. Like a good example is if you're nervous, being in crowds, one safety behavior might be texting on your smartphone, and then you don't have to interact with people. You can be busy texting and look like you're busy in the crowd. So that can be a safety behavior rather than just standing there and letting people mingle and talk to you. So that's just one example. Or having your cell phone with you so that you can call somebody if you get in trouble, or having some escape plan. So that's a separate thing. That's more of a behavioral kind of thing that we have to work on. And then the other part that's really important when we work with anxiety is working on our perfectionism. And I'm going to do a whole class on this one. So that's another piece of it. So we really, in this class, only covered that piece, sort of the general worrying and how do we stop worrying. What's the difference between a problem and a worry? How do we accept things that we can't change? How do we refocus our attention elsewhere? So we covered a lot of that in the group. So there are lots of skills to practice, and you can certainly go back and watch any of the videos or read more books on cognitive therapy on worrying to go into a little bit more depth about it. Certainly it's something that I keep practicing. So those are some of the areas that we covered and what we didn't cover in the class as well. So we just covered one piece of it. So you're just getting started if this is the one class that you've done. Okay. So the other kind of trick to remember as you go along the path is nothing you think is true. I always joke, and I don't suffer as much anymore because I very rarely believe what I think. And if I do, then I know I shouldn't be believing it anyway. And then I'm annoyed with myself because I shouldn't be believing what I'm thinking, and I do, and I know I'm kind of stuck. And then I think, well, then I should be mad at myself because it's just a thought that I should be able to. Anyway, I'll stop. But nothing we think is true, and we want to practice this every day. Challenging all these random thoughts that pop into our head. We think just because we have a thought or we notice something that it's true, and our minds can be quite busy adding on to every little thing that we notice in the day. So you might be stuck in traffic and notice that you're feeling a little tension in your shoulders, and you think, oh, I'm so impatient. I'm just terrible at this cognitive therapy stuff. I can't even sit in traffic and be peaceful, and I know I should be able to do that. I know I should let go of this thought, that I have to be there in some time. Well, that's a lot of mental chatter, right? And none of that is true. All that's happened is you've had muscle tension in traffic. You could approach that situation and say, well, isn't that curious, that I'm feeling impatient. I have a bit of impatience right now. You want to shift. That takes practice, right? There's so many skills involved in challenging what we believe. We have to have awareness, and then we have to be able to think of evidence that goes counter to what our brains are telling us, and then we have to come up with a new way of thinking. Well, there's a lot of steps in learning how not to believe what we think, and so you want to practice this every day. You probably, get really good at shooting down your thoughts, or sometimes it's even nice to think, or your inner critic. Just imagine a little person who's feeling kind of negative, and who do you think you are? You're trying something new, and you have that little inner critic. So sometimes it's helpful to even have that image of someone there that you can talk back to. That's not your voice. It's really actually in a lot of ways your brain's voice trying to protect you. Lay low, don't get in trouble. Don't let anyone notice you. It's just safer down here, or whatever it is. The brain always errs on the side of being overly cautious and safety focused, and those of us who worry. And so just know that's what brains do, and you're going to talk back to this person. And then if you are stuck, not to get frustrated with yourself. If you're stuck, you want to just label it as stuckness. Distracted. As we're speaking in the last video, we talked about distractions, and come here. I had the door closed, but someone snuck in. So this is Max, one of my dogs. My other dog's on the floor here too. So, it's actually easier for dogs to move past anxiety. So Max has an anxiety disorder. He's a rescue dog, and he had some post-traumatic stress disorder when he came to us. He used to shake when he would see people. He was really nervous on the car ride. It took him forever to get used to us and want to hang out with us, and now we can't get him away from us. And or are you looking for treats? So dogs are easier, right? When they learn that something's safe, and when we showed him, people are nice here, and you won't get in trouble for chewing things. You get a little frustrated. He's kind of destroyed our house. He thinks he's like 10 pounds of trouble, and well, yeah, our house is kind of wrecked because of him, but we love him, so he's good. But now he's I wouldn't call him confident, but he'll approach people now. He doesn't avoid people. People used to come to the door, and he would run upstairs and hide. And if I would go get him and bring him because I wanted him to get used to people, he would just shake. So he doesn't have this commentary in his head saying, oh, I'm a bad boy, no one will like me, who would want to play with me? he just had the concept of, oh, not safe. And so once we showed him that things were safe, he started to get better. Now that took a year and a half. So it took a year and a half for a dog with an anxiety disorder. I'm not the dog whisperer, although I love the dog whisperer, but I think he had a bit of trauma. So it took a bit of time for him to learn to feel safe. And he didn't have that chatter saying, I'm a terrible dog, no one will love me. And it still took him time. So you have to realize that's going to take you time too, because not only do you have all these, your body telling you how to be safe, you have this mental chatter that adds to the suffering because you add to the story. He doesn't have a story so much. Well, I don't know. I'll let Caesar Milan answer that one. But I don't, really think he have a story the way that we do. He's snuggling in. Okay, I'm going to put you down. Do you want to sit on your pillow? There we go. Just sit still. No, he wants back up now. Okay, hopefully he doesn't start barking. So the mental chatter always increases the time it takes to learn how not to be afraid of anything. So when you don't have that mental chatter, it's hard enough, to face all these fears and to deal with avoidance and things that scare you. But one of the first things that you need to do is learn how to calm that inner critic that you have in your head that says, no, I can't, and I'm not worthy of this, and this would be awful, and what if this happens, and what if that happens. Dogs really do kind of live in the moment, and so when you show them that everything's okay, then everything's okay, and that's the end of story. He moves on and doesn't get stuck in whatever happened to him in the past. So in this way, it's kind of, I think, good if you've ever worked, for those of you who have worked with animals, that if you've ever rescued anyone, you know the time that it takes them. And so we should at least give ourselves some time to be able to do that and some practice. So when you do get stuck, which you will, right? Even I get stuck. I'll be upset about something and I'll know I shouldn't be. Intellectually, I'll know I shouldn't be upset about it. But I'll go, I just can't figure this one out. Usually I kind of try and treat it as a puzzle to be solved. Okay, I know I shouldn't be upset about this. I know I shouldn't be stuck on this worry. I'm not sure why I am. And I'll spend some time and I'll write. And actually some of the techniques that are in the book, Mind Over Mood by Greenberger and Podesky, book I recommend a lot, can be helpful in sort of covering some of the core, like if I get stuck, there's something deeper. It's not just sort of a fleeting thought that I need to work with to help me get unstuck. And so that can be hard. So sometimes that's where, if you find you're really, really stuck, you can't get past, then a therapist can help you uncover what it is that's keeping you stuck there. Not so much like, I don't do dreams. I've got friends who do dreams, but they may help you with that. What I do is mostly thought records and look at your thoughts and try and uncover some of the beliefs, and when you have a thought, what that says about you. So often if you're stuck, it could be a deeper thought getting in the way, or you just need more practice, or need a little time to cool down. Could be a number of things, but the first step is just to label the stuckness. Not that don't add the mental chatter that I can't do this. This is hopeless. What am I doing? Who do I think I am? All that kind of stuff we say to ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves, and this is really tough work. This is not easy. I figured it out, and I'm still working on it, and I'm sure I'll work on it until I got gray hair. Well, I'm starting to get gray hair, until my hair really goes gray. You can't really see on camera, but anyway. So the next part on all of this is, I often tell people it's really hard to do this work if you are exhausted, if you are completely drained. So you need to take care of yourself. You can't be running on empty. A friend of mine, those of you who came to my workshop last spring, we had Michelle Gunderson here, and she talked about how so many of us act as if it's like we put a smiley face on our empty gas gauge. So we ignore the fact that we're running on empty, and we just plaster a smiley face sticker on front so we can't see that we're running on empty. So we need to come from a place of rest when we do this. Very hard to do this work as thinking to change anything when you're exhausted. So, make sure you get enough rest. I do have the insomnia class up online on Wired to Worry if you have trouble with that. Meditation can also help improve your sleep, and it's also very restful in and of itself. One of my favorite things is to do less. So as much as possible, I'm such a slacker. People ask me how I get things done, and I'm like, well, I don't do housework, and I don't cook, and I don't do a lot of things. I do other things that are important, but there's some things that I kind of joke about that. Not so much. I'm not really domestic at all. So people go, oh, well, now I know why you get so much time to do things. But you do need to do less, or even if you're whatever it is, it can be sort of chores, routines. Mostly, when I talk about doing less, I start with the things I don't like, because they drain you of more energy than things that you do like. If you're doing mostly things that you like all day, at the end of the day, you have that good kind of tired. Whereas if you're doing things you don't like all day, you feel drained and depleted. So actually, stress management 101, the first rule is to do less and get more off your plate. So, those of you who come to my office, I have a paperless office because I hate filing things and dealing with paper. That saved me about 5 hours a week. Minimum. Actually, no, it saved me more than that. But you want to make sure that, excuse me, you want to make sure that you start with the things that streamline, also getting rid of clutter. Clutter takes up a lot of time. If you have an empty place, then it's easy to keep a hotel room fairly clean because there's not much in there. Sorry. Quick sip of water. So the less you have to deal with, the easier it will be. So I'll do a stress management class and we'll brainstorm more on that. Oh, excuse me, see? Not completely over this cold I had last week. Okay. Now, the next thing is, if you can, get help. If there's too much on your plate, and this can be a hard thing to do. So if you can practice different assertiveness skills and figure out ways to get your family to pitch in. I know a lot of people are going, oh, yeah, but there are ways, and it's good for you to be able to make requests, and people may or may not step up to the challenge, and then you figure out what you do for that from there. I could do a whole thing on how to inspire kids to do more around the house. You got to start young. That's the main thing. Makes it a lot easier if you do. But certainly get help, either from your family, or whether you hire some help sometimes, or you just get creative. You trade help, trade babysitting with someone, trade errands, run errands for each other. It's a good way to get to know the people in your neighborhood too, if you set up some sort of group like that. Or even here where I live, there's a great grocery delivery service, so I don't really go to the grocery store that much, and I find actually when I use online ordering for groceries, you save more money because you can take things out of the cart. I don't have the impulse purchases because I go, oh, I don't really need that, and I'll take that out, and you can kind of control your spending and save less, save a lot of time too. So you can see if there's anything like that in your neighborhood that you like. But little things like that you learn over time, or I delegate my vacuuming to Roomba for things like that, or just being more efficient. So wherever you can, if you're doing too much, you got to find a way to have other people pitch in, or cut back on your commitments. Actually, even at work, if there's too much, I decide how much is on my plate now, but when I used to be an employee, it's very easy to have things piled up on your list. And what I would do, even with my boss, is sort of show everything that was on my plate. I wouldn't just say, oh, I'm overwhelmed, I can't take any more. I would get a little spreadsheet, and then I would put down, you could do May, June, July, August. And then here on the other, put down all the projects that you have going. So, for me, there'd be clinical work, which should have been at least 50%. And then I was on a training committee, which was quiet most of the time, or maybe it was even 5%, if that. But in December, when they were deciding which new students to take, it would be up to 50%. And then I'd have rounds, that was 20%. And then I'd have another committee and research, and so at one point, my time added up to 270%. Or you could do it in hours or whatever. So when I laid this out and I said, okay, here's everything on my plate, everything I want to do, what are your priorities to my boss? Here's what I'd like to work on. I really like this research project. I'd like to spend time on that, but I can't because I'm so busy with everything else. Is there anything you can do to take this off my plate? And actually, I got some help. Actually, that was a good thing. But something like that. So you don't want to go in and say, "Oh, I'm overwhelmed. I can't handle this." You need data. So in those situations, when you sit down with data, that actually can take some of the argument out of the conversation. You're just looking, okay, I want to know what your priorities are. So there are creative ways to get things off of your plate. So you can look at it that way. And then the other part of self-care that's really important is, sort of, I don't know what you would call it, more sort of nurturing, if you can. Light massages, they're a good way to sort of reset the stress clock. But whatever it is, whether it's something like if you like acupuncture, or spa days are nice. It's hard to find the time, or tell people you want that for your birthday. You want gift certificates to your favorite spa if that's something that you enjoy. I got one for my birthday, and there's a spa in the building where I work, and it took me 6 months to use it because I was too busy. But even then, if you don't have time for that, a nice bubble bath. Whether you can make it to a yoga class or do a bit of yoga at home, that can be a great thing to do. Certainly exercise. So there's lots of things that you can do to take good care of yourself while you're feeling sort of stressed and overwhelmed. Okay, so let's erase this here. So good self-care, basically. Oh, and I should mention too, good nutrition, good rest, all of that stuff is so important. So then the final thought I want to leave you with for this whole class is probably one of the most important, but it's, expect tough times. Right? There's all going to be times we're going to embarrass ourselves. We're going to lose a job. We'll lose a relationship. Get audited by the government, and then some people are not going to like you no matter how hard you try. You'll fail at certain things. You start a business that could fail, or at least their first attempt will fail. Actually, most successful people have lots of failures under their belt, and they just learn what works. And learning that we're all in the same boat, that we all kind of struggle with all of these things. You don't get through life without some of those what ifs that you worry about coming true. So one thing that Christine Podesky was mentioning in a workshop that I went to last week, that the main difference between people who worry and those who cope are, instead of thinking what if, they think I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. So important, right? So we all know these things that could happen to us. But, really we know that if, we do come to that bridge, I can cope. And we feel confident that, we can come up with a plan to get through it. It might not be pleasant, and, we might go through grief and we might go through loss, but there is a way to cope with that. Or we can find, resources and support. Either, from an institution like a hospital or a university, or from friends and family, with different, or any agencies that happen to be in your community. So we know that, when you stop worrying about things, we accept risks in life, that if we love, we could get hurt. If we try, we might fail. If we go for it, we could fall flat on our faces. So, but really cool things come with that too. And you're already doing it in those areas. I think that's the other thing is, remembering your strengths. So important. There's so many things, cool things that I'm sure you already do and you can think about it, but we tend to discount them, right? We focus on what's wrong with us, what isn't working, what we need to improve on. And life is pretty demoralizing if we focus on everything that's hard or tough or that we're not succeeding at. So if you focus on your strengths and what you do well and then do more of that, I'm going to do a class on procrastination, and often, I find what people should be doing with their lives by what they're doing with their procrastinating. So, when we look at what we love and what we enjoy and what we're good at, and we move in the direction of that, rather than focusing on everything that we do wrong, then it's much, much easier to get energized and move forward. So I hope you enjoyed this first of many classes up on wiredtoworry.com, and we'll keep going. So keep in mind, be kind to yourself. I think that's the first thing, and know that you can cope. And I'll see you next time in the next class. Take care, everyone. Bye.